Hi everyone, today's video is something a little bit different from me. If you are already a subscriber to my channel and you watch my videos regularly, then this video is probably too basic for you, because the aim of this video is to cover the absolute basics of die cutting. So this is for those of you that are new to crafting, new to die cutting. Perhaps you want to buy a die cutting machine but you don't know where to start. I'm hoping in this video to sort of explain all the terminology, explain what you need to know in order to choose what machine is right for you, because there is an overwhelming choice. If I was starting crafting now, I don't think I'd know where to start. It really is quite overwhelming. I started crafting back in 2002, and at that point there was only one machine on the market, so it wasn't about choosing, it was just working out how that one worked. So in this video, I'm going to hopefully tell you all the information that you need to decide what machine is best for you, and I'll give you the basics of how to use it. Before I start, I need to tell you a bit about me and explain to you what I do. So I'm a creative designer and I'm freelance, but I do a lot of work for Sizzix. So although this video, I'm going to try and cover all the brands possible and mention all the different machines, I am obviously a bit biased towards Sizzix Machines, not just because I work for them, but actually Sizzix was the first machine on the market, so it's probably the machine that I'm most familiar with anyway. And throughout the years I've worked for different companies and I have used lots of different other machines, but throughout all that, Sizzix actually is my favourite. So I'm going to just say that straight up, just so you know. But I am going to try and make this video, I'm trying to come at this from a completely unbiased angle. So I am going to tell you the features of other machines, and I'm not trying to sell you a Sizzix machine here. I'm just trying to guide you to choose which machine is right for you, whatever brand that is. So but obviously I need to mention that. So let's start. I'll just give you a brief history of die cutting, but I'm not going to dwell on that because really I want to get into the basics of what you need. But I am assuming you know nothing about die cutting, so I'm just going to tell you where it all started. Sizzix were the first die cutting company out there. The parent company to Sizzix is a company called Ellison in the States, and they were selling a die cutting machine to the education sector for schools. And in 2001 they formed Sizzix, which is the craft side, and that's when they came up with a machine for the craft industry. The machines that they were selling, and still do actually to this day, to schools are big old beasts of machines. They're quite industrial almost, not the sort of thing you'd be making cards on at home. So the Sizzix machines that are on the market today are aimed at crafters, and they're for a start, they're a lot cheaper than the kind of machines that would be used in education, and they're also a lot easier to craft with. So Sizzix started in 2001. Back then they had, it was more of a manual machine than the machines we've got today. It had a big pull down handle and you had to sort of push your plates through. That was the first machine. I'm not going to go into all the specifics of dates of who brought out what when. But around the same time, shortly after Sizzix, another company in the US, Spellbinders, started making die cutting machines as well. And over the next sort of 10 years or so, those machines were developed from the machines with their sort of pull down handle to the machines that are kind of standard today, and that's that they've got rollers. So die cutting machines, manual die cutting machines, the basic principle is that you've got two metal rollers, you wind a handle, and that's what pulls your plates and your dies through. Dies are not sharp. What causes the die to cut out your shape is the pressure of those rollers. So that's the basic principle of a die cutting machine and how it works. From there, let's talk about the different types of machine, because I'm kind of assuming from this that you're going to need my help choosing what machine. So the first thing to think about is, do you want a manual machine? Do you want an electric machine? There are pros and cons to both. I personally prefer a manual machine because I'm die cutting all day every day, it's my job, and a manual machine is, I can control the speed. With an electric machine you put your plates in and it glides through the machine at different speeds. Some machines are slower than some are faster, so that's something to consider. A lot of people prefer an electric machine, particularly if they find it physically difficult to kind of crank through your dies, because there is a bit of physical strengthening, not a lot, but you know, if you've got any dexterity issues, you might choose to go for an electric machine. Also portability, obviously a manual machine you can kind of take with you and use anywhere. An electric machine you need to plug it in, so that's another thing. So I think the choice between manual and electric is your first thing to consider and decide on. From there, the next thing to think about is size. There are, broadly speaking, sort of 3 sizes of machine. I say broadly speaking because obviously there are a couple of machines that kind of differ from that. I would say the standard size is a 6-inch platform. Let me show you. I've obviously got Sizzix machines here, but the sizes are kind of generic. So a standard size Sizzix Big Shot, which is the machine I've got here, and I would say generally for most people this would be your starting point for a machine this size. I'll get into why you'd want a larger one in a second, but that's the machine I use all day every day. The plates for this are 6 inches across. If you're in the UK, these plates are kind of A5 size is the easiest way to describe them. So that's what I would call the standard size machine. Lots of different companies make this size. If you're thinking of a manual machine, there's the Spellbinders Platinum. I'm not going to reel off loads of machines, but it would be described as a 6-inch platform if you're looking at different machines. Then the larger size, this is the plates from my Sizzix Big Shot Plus. This is 9 inches across. UK kind of size, you'd be thinking of it basically A4. Again, there are lots of different brands of machine that make this size. And then the third kind of size is what I would call a mini machine. Sizzix make a machine called the Sidekick. This has tiny little plates. This is a good machine if you like to just cut like small flowers, things like that. Personally, I think this size of machine is too small to be your main machine. I think you would quickly outgrow this if you bought this as your first machine, because you'd be quite limited. You're only able to use very small dies in here, so I think you would quickly outgrow it and end up buying a standard size machine anyway. So my advice would be to go for either a standard or a plus size. And if you like the idea of this for speed, get this as an additional machine. I wouldn't recommend getting this as your first machine unless you really are tight on budget and you really want to just have a little play with die cutting before you get into a bigger machine. But you would quickly outgrow that, I think. So the last thing to consider about when choosing a machine is the depth of the mouth of the machine, because for thicker dies, let's explain. I need to kind of rewind a bit here and explain to you about the different types of dies. You get thin metal dies for cutting cardstock. That's these. Now these generally are for cardstock. If it's simple shapes, you can probably cut felt and other things with them, but as a general rule, you would say these are for paper and card. If you want to cut fabrics or cork or metal, craft metal, mat board, mount board, that type of thing, then you need a steel rule blade die. Sizzix make these, their brand of dies, these type are called Bigs dies. Spellbinders also make a thick die. I think there's probably a couple of other companies, but it is generally or mainly Sizzix and Spellbinders that sell these thicker dies. If you are into quilting, soft crafts, or perhaps making journals, that kind of thing, where you want to be cutting from other materials, then this is a consideration you need to think about when choosing a machine, because not all machines, there are a lot of die cutting machines that this will not fit through. off the top of my head, obviously it will work with all Sizzix machines because they sell these. Spellbinders also make these, so their machine, the Platinum, this will work through the Spellbinders Platinum. The Platinum and the Big Shot, so the Sizzix is the Big Shot, the Spellbinders machine is called the Platinum. They're very similar in sizing. So the Sizzix standard size Big Shot, which is the A5 size, 6 inches across. The Spellbinders Platinum machine that's equivalent to that is called the Platinum 6 because it's 6 inches, so that's easy enough to remember. And then the A4 9-inch machines is the Sizzix Big Shot Plus, and then the Spellbinders Platinum is just called the Spellbinders Platinum, so that's the larger machine, and then their smaller machine is the Platinum 6. So I think if you are thinking that you want to be able to cut these type of dies, those two options would probably be your obvious choice, either Spellbinders or Sizzix. Have a look at both. I'm not going to say whether one is better than the other, because actually I think in that choice it's down to whichever one you like the look of, because they both do the same thing. And I'm not going to push a Sizzix machine for the sake of it. So have a look. They're both great machines. So I think if you are interested in these, then those are your options. Let's go one step further on that though, because if you want the ability to cut these thicker dies, but you want an electric machine, then you are a little bit limited even more. The Sizzix have two electric machines. They have a Big Shot Express, which is basically the A5 size Big Shot, the standard size Big Shot, that has a motor on the side of it and a push button. It's been around for years. Recently they've brought out a very beautiful machine called the Sizzix Big Shot Switch. Now that's A4 9 inches, so it's a bigger machine, but you can cut these through it. And these type of dies do come in different sizes up to 9 inches. So my personal opinion is if you are wanting to use these type of dies, you probably do want to be going for a machine that allows you to, you do want to be going for a machine that's got that wider opening. So in terms of choosing a machine, let's summarize it, because I know this is a lot to take in. So you're down to manual electric. Once you've chosen whether you want manual electric, your next consideration is size of platform. Do you want 6 inches, 9 inches, or do you want to start with a mini machine? Then the other consideration is the depth of the mouth. If you want to be able to cut other materials than card and paper, then you need to be thinking about a machine that you can put these steel rule blade dies through. So that narrows your choice down quite drastically, really, to Sizzix or Spellbinders. There's also an electric machine called Cut and Boss, Embosser I think it's called, that does have a wide enough mouth for these, but you really are a little bit more limited once you get into the realms of these. Personally, I think if you've got the choice and the budget to choose whatever machine you want, I can't see why you would go for a machine that doesn't give you this ability, because you never know what craft you're going to get into next. You might think, oh, I only make cards, but the way this hobby evolves, you never know what's around the corner and what you might want to do. So I would say if you're investing in a machine, why not future-proof yourself and go for one that can take these. I will put in the description box on YouTube links to all the different types of machines, and I'll try and cover everything. I'll list them in sections so it's clear which machine covers you for what type of thing, because I know this is really a lot to take in and quite confusing. So I think we've covered enough to help you choose the machine that you need. So once you've got your machine, the other thing to think about is what dies you want to buy. Let's talk about dies. So we've already covered the thick cartridge type dies with a blade inside. So if you want to use these, you know which machines you're kind of limited to as such. so we don't need to dwell on those. The next thing is thin metal dies. Thin metal dies, you pretty much, obviously depending on the size of them, some of them are designed just for the A4 9-inch machines, but generally speaking, thin metal dies are much of a muchness across all the different brands. There are hundreds of companies that make thin metal dies. So for die cutting with thin dies, you've got a fantastic choice of designs, and you're not limited on machine. Whatever die cutting machine you go for, you'll be able to use thin metal dies with, basically, generally speaking. There's one thing I do need to mention, which I know is going to kind of add confusion to it, but I have to mention it. Thin metal dies generally are the same across all the different brands, and they work in all machines. Your only limitation as to the machine is different sizes, because obviously sometimes these are bigger than your platform. If you get these in A4 size for the 9-inch platforms or whatever. But Crafters Companion make some dies that look like thin metal dies like this, but they're a bit thicker, and they are designed to cut thicker materials, a bit like your cartridge dies do. You wouldn't want to be using those in other machines. So if you're going for a Crafters Companion Gemini, the Gemini machines are all electric, and these mixed media dies, they're called, are designed only to use in their machine, because I think they've got special sandwich combinations that make them work. If you were to use those, because they're thicker, in other machines, you would very likely wreck your cutting plates, because obviously it's working on pressure, and if you put something through that's a completely different thickness, it's probably going to get stuck in your plates, or so not recommended to use those in other machines. However, if you buy any dies like that, it will say on the packaging what machines it's compatible with. But I just wanted to mention it, because obviously you could damage your plates if you use mixed media dies, but really it's going to be quite obvious on the packaging that those are something different than your general thin metal dies. And I'm sorry if that's a bit confusing, but I needed to mention it. So the other thing that you would be using your die cutting machine for is embossing. And embossing folders are very much a thing now, and lots of companies make them. There's lots of different lovely designs. Embossing folders do vary in thickness, both in the types of embossing folder. These are Sizzix, and Sizzix have sort of 2D embossing folders, and then more recently, in the last couple of years, they've come out with thicker folders that give a really detailed 3D emboss. Other companies make 3D and 2D, and I do find that embossing folders vary in thickness across different brands. So I'm not going to get into that, because that adds a whole other thing, because obviously it depends what machine you're using and what embossing folders. The main thing to mention is that generally embossing folders work in all the different machines. It's just a case of working out what plates you need to fit it through. You do get embossing folders in different sizes. Most of them are kind of this size that work in the sort of 6-inch A5 combination, but you do get larger formats, and you get square as well as sort of, these are A2 card size, but you can get different sizes. So with embossing folders, you do need to just check the size and the depth, but generally speaking, they work across the board in different machines. So you don't really need to think about them when you're considering what machine to get. I'm not going to get into an actual tutorial in how to die cut and how to use a machine. I have got videos. If you're going for a Sizzix machine, I have got videos on that. There's a video on my, if you look through my video list, there's one called A Beginner's Guide to the Big Shot. And in that video, I literally go through, what do you do to use an embossing folder? What do you do to use a big die? What do you do to use thin metal dies? So if you're going for a Sizzix machine, then go through all of my videos, because there's loads of tutorials. If you're going for another brand of machine, go to the website of that company, because they always have tutorials on there. So I'm not going to get into that, but I am going to just mention a few basic things that are generic that you need to know before you start die cutting. So whatever machine you go for, you will generally get some sort of platform and then different types of plates. And shims, they would be called shims. Some machines have magnetic shims, so that when you put your thin metal dies in, they don't move around. They all vary, and it would depend on the machine. But with all of the machines, you will get instructions telling you, if you're using an embossing folder, you need this plate, this plate, and this plate. So all of that's going to be covered in the instructions with your machine. But the basics are the same regardless of the machine you get. You're generally going to have a base platform, various different plates and shims. With a Sizzix machine, you get 2 clear plates for that you cut into. And from all of your different plates and things, the only ones you're going to need to replace generally are the cutting plates. Some machines you'll only have 1 cutting plate. With a Sizzix you've got 2. And you will see, this is one I've been using for a while. Over time they get a bit bent, they get really scratched up, but that's normal. Eventually you'll have to buy a new one. You can prolong the life of these by firstly putting something heavy on them to keep them flat when you're not using them. Put your machine on top. You also get bits of card kind of stuck in all the scratches, so if you want to get the most out of them, every now and then give them a wash with some soapy water. And the other thing to mention is you'll get more life out of them if you rotate them. So when you're running your plates through the machine, don't always put them the same way. Flip them, rotate them, so that you're gonna sort of get even wear on it. Also place your dies all around the plate. Don't just always put your die right in the center, because your plate will warp more, and obviously all your scratches will kind of be in the same area. So to get the most out of these, do that. You will need to replace them, and it depends how much die cutting you do as to how often you'll have to replace them. Another basic thing to mention is the first time when you get your brand new machine and your plates are lovely and clean, don't panic, because I know a lot of people panic as they run it through and it gets marks on it. You think you've ruined it, but that's what it's for. It's gonna end up looking like that, so don't worry about that. I know people I know a lot of people use the same plates for years. I obviously do a lot of die cutting. I probably change mine about every 6 weeks, but that's with doing this as a job. So I would say as a crafter, you're going to get at least 6 months out of a set of plates before you even need to think about it. The other tip for you is, if you're using a machine where you've got 2 different cutting plates like the Sizzix, keep one as clear as possible. So put your dies onto one, because if you let one get scratched up and keep the other one relatively clear, it kind of helps you because you can see through it better. If you've got 2 plates that are completely scratched, you can't see through the top one. So I know a lot of people will keep one for cutting into, keep one relatively clean, and then when they need to replace the really scratched up one, you would use the one that you've been using as your clean plate as your scratched up plate, and then put just one, so you're just replacing one plate at a time. So that's a helpful tip. I think that's covered everything, so I hope that's helped you. If you've got any questions at all, because I know that I've talked a lot and there's a lot of information here, so please leave me any questions in the comments. I will put all the info in the description box. So underneath my video you'll see a little arrow to the right hand side. If you click on that, it brings down a whole list, and I will give you links to all the different machines, and I'll try and categorize them so that it's obvious which machine, what size it is, etc. So that you know, after watching this video, you've hopefully decided what size machine you want, whether you want a manual or electric. So I'll put links to the different machines there, and hopefully that will help you. But as I say, any questions, please just ask. Also, subscribe to my channel, because I am planning on doing a series of these very much beginner type videos. So if you are a new crafter, subscribe to my channel, and hopefully I'll be covering other things that are going to help you. So thanks for watching, and I'm sorry I've talked so much, but I hope that's been helpful.